Just because you're always available doesn't mean you're making a difference. That's a hard pill to swallow, I know. We've been raised to believe that being constantly accessible, always saying yes, always showing up, always answering is a sign of dedication, that it proves you care, that it's what successful, driven people do. But the truth? That mindset is outdated, exhausting, and it's costing you your real value. Let me tell you something I had to learn the hard way. People will take as much of you as you allow. If you're always answering the phone, replying to every message, jumping in to solve every issue, even the ones that aren't your responsibility, you're not proving your value. You're proving you don't value yourself. You're showing people that your time, your energy, your priorities, then they're not supposed to be. Think about it. The more accessible something is, the less people value it. That's not just some mindset fluff, that's psychology. Scarcity creates demand. It builds curiosity. It drives respect. Now, I'm not saying you should vanish or ghost people. I'm saying your presence should be purposeful, not constant. Because when you're always available, people stop noticing what you bring to the table. You're just always there. Background noise. A default, a safety net. But you are not a safety net. You are not background noise. You are someone with skills, with dreams, with purpose. And every second you spend trying to prove your worth through constant availability is a second you could be using to increase your worth by doing the deep work that actually matters. Let's break this down. You can be in every meeting and still not contribute anything meaningful. You can reply instantly to every message and still not be respected. You can say yes to everything and still be overlooked when it really counts. Why? Because presence doesn't equal impact. Activity doesn't equal value. And the more you spread yourself thin, the more you dilute the very thing you're trying to protect. Your significance. Here's the truth. People remember outcomes, not attendance. They remember who solved the problem, who delivered the idea that changed the game, who showed up with clarity when everyone else was scrambling. They don't remember who was always sitting in the room quietly, nodding along. They don't remember who answered emails at midnight. They remember results. So ask yourself, are you building results? Or are you just making yourself available to everyone so they won't forget you? That kind of fear-based behavior keeps you stuck. It keeps you overworked and under-recognized. And worst of all, it keeps you from growing into the person you're meant to become. Because growth doesn't happen when you're constantly reacting. Growth happens when you make space to focus, to build, to learn, to rest. Now let's talk about boundaries. I get it, saying no feels selfish, especially if you're the one people rely on. But guess what? Boundaries don't push people away. They teach people how to treat you. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve your goals, your values, or your mental health, you're actually saying yes to your future. You're choosing to protect your energy for the things that matter. That's not selfish. That's smart. That's leadership. You want to be seen as valuable? Then stop giving yourself away for free. Stop answering every call. Stop saying yes out of guilt. Stop showing up just to prove you're loyal. Instead, start creating space for deep work, for creativity, for strategic thinking, for doing the kind of work that only you can do. Because when you focus on what makes you valuable, you stop needing to prove yourself through availability. It's time to shift the goal. The goal is not to be constantly connected. The goal is to be undeniably effective, to be respected for your insight, not your inbox speed, to be remembered for your results, not your responsiveness. That's how you create value. And once you start showing up like that, your presence becomes powerful. people start listening differently. So from this moment forward, I want you to repeat this to yourself every single day. I don't need to be everywhere to matter. I just need to be excellent where I choose to show up. Be valuable, not just available. The difference will change your life. Scarcity builds respect. It really does. The less accessible you are, the more intentional your time becomes, and the more people begin to value it. This is not about playing games or acting like you're too important. It's about shifting how you manage your energy, your time, and your self-worth. When you're constantly available to everyone, you're sending a message whether you realize it or not. My time is invaluable. I don't have boundaries. Interrupt me, use me. I'll always say yes. And let's be honest, most of us have done this. We've said yes when we wanted to say no. We've answered messages at midnight, not because it was urgent, but because we didn't want to seem unavailable. Here's the truth. Being constantly available might make you feel needed, but it doesn't make you respected. In fact, it often does the opposite. It makes people expect access, not appreciate it. Think about anyone in your life who always drops everything, always says yes, always answers. Do you genuinely value their time, or have you started taking it for granted? That's the hard part, right? When you overextend yourself, people stop seeing it as generosity. They start seeing it as standard. Now think of the people you admire, the ones who seem calm, focused, and respected. They're not available 24/7. They don't answer every call. They're not in every group chat or responding to every crisis. And yet, when they speak, people listen. When they show up, they make impact. When they contribute, it matters. Why? Because they've built respect around their presence. And part of that respect comes from their intentional scarcity. Scarcity isn't about being distant. It's not about cutting people off or becoming unreachable. It's about creating space for your own life. It's about filtering what gets your attention, because attention is a finite resource. Every yes you give is a no to something else. When you're constantly saying yes out of fear of missing out, fear of judgment, fear of not being liked, you're actually saying no to your focus, your goals, and your personal growth. And let's be real, people respect what they have to reach for. When you're always there, always responding, always jumping in, you're easy to overlook. But when you're deliberate with your time, when you respond with intention, not immediacy, people learn to approach you differently. They stop interrupting you with minor things. They start thinking before they reach out, because you've created a reputation that says, I'm here to help, but only when it's meaningful. One of the biggest shifts in my life came when I started protecting my time instead of offering it like a free sample at a grocery store. I stopped apologizing for not responding right away. I stopped saying yes to everything out of guilt. I started asking, is this worth my energy? Instead of, will they be mad if I say no? And you know what happened? The quality of my relationships improved. My work got better. My confidence grew because I was finally treating my time with the same respect I wanted others to show it. You are not doing anyone a favor by making yourself endlessly available. You're not helping people grow. You're enabling dependency. You're draining yourself. You're teaching people that your needs come last, and eventually that becomes your reality. Respect starts with how you treat yourself. If you don't honor your own boundaries, why would anyone else? Let me give you this example. Imagine your time is like a limited edition item. There's only so much of it, and it's high quality. You wouldn't throw it at everyone who walked by, would you? No. You'd be selective. You'd make sure it went to people who appreciated it, who used it wisely, who understood its worth. That's how you need to treat your time. Because when your time becomes precious, people rise to meet that standard. So here's your reminder. You don't owe anyone constant access to you. You don't need to explain every boundary. You don't need to feel guilty for protecting your peace. When you stop being always available, you start becoming highly respected. People pay attention when your presence feels like a gift instead of a guarantee. Respect doesn't come from how much you give. It comes from how wisely you choose to give it. Scarcity builds respect. Let that guide how you show up in every area of your life. There's a major misunderstanding out there, this belief that just showing up is enough, that being present equals being productive, that responding quickly, attending every meeting, saying yes to every project makes you valuable. But let me tell you the truth. Your real value doesn't come from being present. It comes from what you bring to the table when you show up. And that comes down to one thing: skills, results, growth, the things you actively build, not just the space you fill. You could be the most available person on your team, in your family, in your community. You could be the first one to raise your hand, the fastest to respond, the person who's always around. But if you're not bringing something meaningful, an idea, a strategy, a solution, a skill, then your presence blends into the background. People remember contribution, not just participation. And here's where it gets really important, especially if you're someone who has dreams, big goals, and a deep desire to live a life of purpose. The only way you level up in life is by becoming someone who solves real problems. That means you can't waste your energy just being available. You have to protect your time so you can build value. And that value comes from doing the work behind the scenes, the focused, quiet, often invisible work of growth. We live in a distracted world. Everyone wants to look busy, stay plugged in, be responsive 24/7. But there's a difference between motion and progress. You can answer every message, join every call, check every notification, and still not move forward an inch. Real progress happens when you step back, block out the noise, and put your energy into building something that matters. Learning a new skill, developing your thinking, creating results. That's where your value skyrockets. You want to become indispensable? Then you need to focus on developing depth. You don't become a top performer by replying quickly. You become a top performer by knowing how to deliver something others can't. You become irreplaceable by learning things most people ignore, by thinking strategically, by building skills that solve real problems. The person who can walk into a room and offer clarity when everyone else is confused, that's the person who gets noticed. The person who's so good at what they do that their presence makes the whole team better, that's the person who gets promoted. That's the person people trust. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you focused, really focused, on building your value? Not just staying caught up, not just responding to what's thrown at you, but deliberately investing in yourself, your mindset, your skills, your strengths. That's the work that makes you powerful. That's the work most people skip because it doesn't give you immediate feedback. It's not loud. It doesn't get applause, but it's the foundation of long-term respect and influence. Look, I'm not saying you should disappear or ignore people, but I am saying you need to be intentional about what gets your time. If every hour of your day is spent reacting to someone else's priorities, then when are you building your own future? When are you sharpening your edge? When are you getting better? The people who rise to the top in any field, the ones who make impact, who lead, who earn real respect, they didn't do it by being the most available. They did it by being the most valuable. They carved out time to develop themselves. They said no to things that didn't grow them. They were willing to step back from the noise and commit to the work that no one sees, but that everyone feels when it shows up. So here's your wake-up call. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to be everything to everyone. You need to be excellent at what you do. And that excellence comes from focused time, from training, from learning, from repetition, from saying, I'm not going to be available right now because I'm busy becoming someone you can't ignore. Let people wait. Let some calls go unanswered. Let the non-essential things fall off your list. Why? Because you're investing in becoming someone whose value speaks louder than their availability. Remember, people don't pay for access. They pay for expertise. They don't reward the one who's always present. They reward the one who makes things happen. That's your job now. Don't chase being busy. Build being brilliant. That's where the power is. That's where the real value lives. Over-availability leads to burnout. Period. This isn't just a theory, it's a truth too many people are living through right now. You say yes to everyone. You're constantly checking messages, jumping from one task to another, always on call. And somewhere along the way, you stop recognizing yourself. You're exhausted, you're irritated, you can't focus. And worst of all, you're no longer doing your best work. You're just surviving your day. Let me be real with you. You were not put on this earth to be a 24/7 support system. You're not a machine. You're not meant to be everyone's backup plan, fixer, problem solver, and emotional crutch all at the same time. But when you're constantly available, when you don't have boundaries, when you say yes to everything, you become just that. You become the person people rely on for everything except your own dreams, your own peace, your own priority. And here's the dangerous part. At first, it feels good. You feel important, needed, useful. But over time, that constant availability starts to drain you. Not because the tasks are impossible, but because you're never off. Your brain is always on. You're always anticipating the next call, the next ping, the next request. You never get a moment to breathe. And when your brain doesn't rest, your body pays the price. Your creativity suffers. Your motivation drops. Your stress levels go up. And your sense of self-worth, it slowly starts to depend on how much you do for others instead of how aligned you are with your own purpose. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in. It hides behind the mask of being busy. You convince yourself that it's just a rough week, that you just need to push through. But the truth is, if you keep running like this, constantly responding, constantly giving, constantly proving, you're going to break. You're going to reach a point where you have nothing left to give anyone, including yourself. And that's when the guilt kicks in, the shame, the feeling that you're failing everyone. But you're not failing because you're not capable. You're failing because you're overcommitted. You cannot keep saying yes to everything and expect to live a life of purpose. You can't keep stretching yourself thin and expect to feel whole. There is nothing noble about burning out. Nothing impressive about being the last one working and the first one online. That's not leadership. That's self-neglect. And self-neglect will always come back to cost you more than you think. So let me ask you this. When did you last do something just for you? Not because someone needed you, not because it was on your calendar, not because it earned praise, but because it restored you. Because it fueled your mind, because it gave you energy. If you're struggling to answer that, you're probably running on empty and trying to convince yourself you're fine. You want to show up stronger? Then you need to protect your boundaries like your life depends on it, because it does. Your mental health, your physical energy, your ability to be creative and resilient and kind, all of it depends on your ability to say, not now, not this time. I need to rest. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. People will get used to your boundaries. They will adjust. And the ones who don't, they were benefiting from your burnout, not your brilliance. You're not here to be a lifeline for everyone else while drowning in your own overwhelm. You are here to do something meaningful, and that starts with taking care of you. Overavailability is a choice. So is setting limits. So is protecting your peace. You don't have to apologize for needing space. You don't have to explain why you didn't answer right away. You are allowed to be unavailable. You are allowed to turn your phone off. You are allowed to take a break. Because here's the truth, when you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you finally make room to be something powerful to yourself. And that version of you, that's the one who changes your life. So don't wait until burnout forces you to stop. Choose to pause now. Choose to reset. Choose to build a life where your energy is protected, your focus is sacred, and your worth isn't tied to how available you are. You weren't born to be busy. You were born to be bold. But that only happens when you stop burning out and start building boundaries that protect your brilliance. Being busy doesn't mean you're being productive. We all love to wear busy like it's a badge of honor. It makes us feel important. It makes us feel needed. It gives us a sense of momentum. But let me break it to you. Busyness is not the same as effectiveness. You can fill every minute of your day with tasks, meetings, replies, and check-ins, and still be miles away from where you actually want to go. That's the trap. You look like you're moving, but you're not moving forward. You want to know what separates high performers from everyone else? It's not how full their calendar is. It's how intentional they are with their time. They don't just fill their day. They prioritize it. They know what matters, what moves the needle, what creates results. And they focus on those things first. Everyone else is busy doing everything. They're focused on doing what matters. And here's the thing. When you're always available, you fall into the trap of reactive living. You wake up and instantly check your phone. You're responding to other people's needs before you even take care of your own. You spend your entire day reacting. Emails, calls, meetings, favors. And before you know it, the day is over. You were busy all day, but you didn't actually accomplish anything that truly mattered to you. Sound familiar? That's what happens when you confuse availability with productivity. Just because you're reachable doesn't mean you're reliable. Just because you're active doesn't mean you're effective. True productivity requires space, mental space, time to think, time to plan, and time to execute with clarity. And you don't get that space when you're constantly saying yes. You don't get that space when you're letting your inbox dictate your priorities. You get that space when you take control of your time and you protect it like your future depends on it, because it does. Let me be really clear. You don't need to be constantly online, constantly replying, constantly doing 10 things at once to be seen as a top performer. In fact, the most successful people I know deliberately remove distractions. They say no a lot more than they say yes. They guard their schedules like their lives depend on it. Because in many ways, it does. You only get one life, and you can either spend it being busy or you can spend it building something real. Ask yourself, are you filling your calendar or fulfilling your potential? There's a big difference. The first makes you tired. The second makes you alive. You don't need to prove your worth by how much you can do in a day. You prove your worth by what you choose to do with intention. That means slowing down and getting clear on your priorities. That means deciding what truly matters and ruthlessly eliminating the rest. That's not selfish. That's strategy. Look around. The world is full of exhausted, overbooked people who confuse motion with meaning. They're chasing a feeling of accomplishment, but never taking the time to ask if they're actually achieving anything of value. They're overwhelmed, distracted, and stuck in a cycle of endless activity. You don't want that life. That life will drain you, not fulfill you. You want to be truly productive, then take a step back. Look at your schedule. Look at how much of your time is being spent reacting to others. Look at how many things you're doing that don't bring you closer to your goals. Now start removing them. Cancel what doesn't matter. Delay what can wait. Delegate what someone else can do. And focus with fierce clarity on what will actually move your life forward. And stop equating your value with how much you do. Your value is in your impact, not your activity. Your value is in the results you create, not the hours you log. Stop measuring your worth by how fast you reply and start measuring it by how much you grow. Busy is easy. Productive is brave. Productive means making hard choices. It means disappointing people. It means holding boundaries, but it also means living your life on purpose. And that, my friend, is where your power is. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself by being constantly available, remember this. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most and giving yourself permission to ignore the rest.